to support, to not be a drain on the system. I grew up on welfare, as I said, so I knew what being a drain on the system was like and felt like. And it was a responsibility to me to not be that person. And on a daily basis, I awaken and I'm grateful for the fact that I made that decision. And that I'm not a drag on the system, that I'm on the board of the Hero Initiative as opposed to a client. This gives me enormous joy. It means that I can give back as opposed to take. And I'm often surfeited by the number of people, colleagues of mine, who treated me with a benign contempt, benign occasionally, mostly just disdain, in the 1970s, who didn't really plan, who didn't really take into account that life is fleeting, that attention is transient. And I get up every morning, and I do a series of morning material, and do some meditation and shit like this. 9 o'clock, I'm at my desk, and I'm making comic books. And I work for free. I no longer bill anyone. I finance my own work, because I can. And it gives me enormous pleasure. It also gives me enormous freedom. I don't sell. I mean, I have more Facebook friends than I have monthly sales. But I've come to understand that your attention is of no interest or value to me. That I don't care what you think. And that if you come to me, enjoy the work that I do, no matter what it is, I'm okay. I'm grateful. I don't owe you anything. And it's a really healthy, spiritually and soulfully comfortable experience. If I depended on my self-esteem on the taste of the comic book artist, I'd have slit my throat years ago. Because there are two great laws in comics. We've been trying to compile more. We've got a couple of them. But the first two laws are Simonson's Law. Simonson's Law is that comic book enthusiasts will always tell you the truth as long as it's unpleasant. Look within you. Look within you. And Chaykin's Law is that a fan who goes rapturous over your work and tells you how much they love it will always add a couple of names of people whom you have complete contempt. It's true. Yes, sir.
Has there ever been a negative opinion about mainstream comics, specifically from the time you started American Flag and forward? A negative opinion about mainstream comics that you have changed to positive?
How do you mean?
You made clear, as a fan of yours, that your opinion of mainstream comics, one way or another, has never been positive.
Well, I grew up with them. I was a youth, but no, I mean.
Have you ever said, you know, maybe I was wrong about that?
A specific book, you mean?
Just something in the genre that has changed, that you've seen how it's impacted people or fans, where you might have said that was negative. No, you've never had it.
No, I'm too fucking dogmatic to that shit. I mean, the last mainstream book I read with any regularity was I loved 100 Bullets, the first 30 some odd issues. When Axel stopped editing it, the book became a meandering mess. I'm a great believer in editors. You know, how odd that might sound, right? I've worked with some of the best editors in the business. And Axel Alonso was one of them. And Scout, the Jason Aaron book with Guerra. It took me a while to get past Guerra's art because I found it kind of unclear and vague. But no, not really. I mean, the problem is I love Watchmen, except for the fact that like so much of Alan's stuff, it has no ending. You know, for all the shit that Snyder gets, he did an ending in the film that is internal in the narrative. You know, Western writing is based on structure. And you don't pull something out of the Deus Ex Machina nature of the end of Watchmen, the comic book, is absent from the movie. The movie actually has a problem and a solution that is intrinsic to the narrative. It's there. And that's true of a lot of Alan's stuff. I mean, Alan's confidence gets in the way of his completions. You know, Eleanor Leonard was notorious for not doing outlines, as is Stephen King. Although I can't read King. I read King's essays. I'm not a fan of his fiction. And Eleanor Leonard would not do outlines. And it worked for him a lot. Then it didn't. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. Up in Honey's Room is a mess. It's a great read, and then all of a sudden it ends. You know, it's got a great mise en scène, and there's nothing going on by the end. I like narrative structure, you know. I thought the last Superman story that Alan did with Dave was really good. But again, it's a Superman story. I don't care. You know, I thought the work that Frank did with David Mazzucchelli was really beautiful and interesting. But it's still about shit I don't care about. You know, I mean, it was in the 1960s, in the summer of 1968, DC published Batlash and Enemy Ace. And I mean, the Koenig was just a fucking lunatic. Koenig was a former teen lunch guy. So the Enemy Ace stuff was just like all over the place, but it was beautiful. And I really liked Batlash a great deal. But for the most part, you know, for me, these days when I look at comic books, what I look at is EC stuff. I look at Woody every day. I look at John Severin every day. I look at Alex Toth every day. I also like, there are a lot of Spanish guys I really like. I love Carlos Jimenez. Carlos was one of the two Spanish artists I first discovered when I was a little boy. He and Esteban Morocco. But Jimenez became a great political figure in Spain, doing a series of books about the Spanish Civil War that are just breathtaking. They're cartoony, and they seem to be funny, but they're not. They're just really brutal. And it's great stuff. And every so often somebody shows me shit that knocks me out. You know, but I'm available to be knocked out. Someone else? Yes, sir. Can you talk really loud and stand up? I'm really loud and I stand up.
You had mentioned the start of your talk that the CCA like prevented American comics from moving in the same direction as like Europe or Japan or the rest of Asia. Can you elaborate on like what you think the distinctions or positive differences there are in international works?
No, well, you know, the Comics Code Authority imposed on American comic books the idea that comic books are for children. They were a children's product. And it drove away a slew of people who looked at comics, who saw the comics had potential to be something else. And those people came back in the early 60s in the underground. And significantly, to a man, every one of them identified Harvey Kurtzman as the reason for their being interested in comics, the Mad Comics and Mad Magazine in the 50s. There were very few people who identified other aspects of the more adulty kind of comics, like the war books and the horror books. Bill Griffith, who was recently published a book about his late life, and is also about Tony Bushmiller, was notorious for despising Richard Corbin's work, regarding Corbin as a throwback to mainstream. And this is a theme that's been running through comics for years. My generation, to a great extent, earnestly believed that we would be a revival of the ethos of EC and bring back a kind of more nuanced, you know, more real world observed material. You know, Jeffrey O'Brien, the poet and critic, always said that crime fiction is as fantastical as science fiction, but it is based on absurd reality. And I really like absurd reality. It's something I hated as a child, because I lived in a shitty experience and I wanted the fantasy of science fiction and space opera and stuff like that. But I think that I always knew that comics as a product had been infantilized. I hadn't realized how much the audience had been infantilized. That a potential audience for more complex material was just dismissed, just removed from the playing field. And this coincided with my discovery of comic books. I don't discover the EC stuff some 10 years later, when they were published in trade paperbacks by Valentine. Like, where the fuck did this come from? This is fantastic. And again, a lot of the EC stuff is puerile. The horror books are just pieces of shit. They're just really dumbass. But the war books, there are some significant pieces in the war books that are just transcendent. And the liberal hysteria comics of shock suspense are pretty intriguing for their early time. And these are written for children. There's a great essay by Robert Warshaw. You know Robert Warshaw? Okay. Warshaw, the essay was printed, you can find it online, called My Son Paul, the EC Comics and Me. It's really worth reading. It's an interesting observation by an intellectual who had a real appreciation for popular culture. There were a number of men, mostly men, in that time, starting in the late 30s, who began to identify popular culture as having value separate and distinct from high culture. Gilbert Seldes, who wrote The Seven Lively Arts, who identified comic strips, jazz, and movies. Manny Farber, who was the critic of the Boston Globe in the early 1939-1940, who reviewed a movie called They Drive by Night, which is the first time anyone had reviewed a B movie as if it were a product. And Robert Warshaw, there was this group of guys, mostly New York Jewish intellectuals. And Warshaw wrote a great deal about Western movies and about comics. And the observations indicate his own discomfort with the material in regard to his son's obsession with them, but his acknowledgement that he could understand their appeal. And that's really important. I know that's a digressive answer, but I want to help you. Someone else? Yes, sir.
Yeah. Is there anything you
Louder and stand up.
Not talking to you know?
I don't care if you do this one. We're at that waning time. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, is there anything that you read that you liked or didn't like, and then you reread it and it changed that you did like it or you didn't like it?
No.
No? So you felt the same way when you read it?
No, I mean, in fact, I did a panel earlier with Greg Goldstein about swipes, and we were looking at a lot of the Golden Age stuff. And I love the innocent grandeur of Golden Age comic book covers. They're so rich with a patriotic fervor that I really admire. I truly do. I mean, I'm from a very left-wing red diaper baby family who identified ourselves as American patriots. And to a man and a woman in my family, we deeply resented the hijacking of the concept of patriotism by a bunch of cockback nationalists. The first time I saw a flag burn, I knew I was no longer in the right state, because these people didn't understand the Norman Thomas quote, which is you don't burn a flag, you wash it. But I have an aversion to nostalgia. I don't like nostalgia. Nostalgia is good stuff. It's not really good. But I'm easily moved by material. I'm a big crier. I weep at everything. Not a joke. My wife always sits on my left, and she will know exactly when to reach a tissue across. It's the truth. So no, I'd love it to happen, you know, and I'm available for it to happen, because I do have contemporary investigation. I've recently been reviewing all the Star Wars movies that keep coming out without seeing them. Because I can. You know, people run like this a lot. They'll act with their eyebrows, and there'll be stupid comedy in lieu of actual wit. And that's pretty much it. Someone else? Cowards. Asshole.
No,
You gotta go?
options.
Get with it, baby!
Options about great discussion.
Okay. Good luck.
Thanks.
Stand up.
Okay. Comics today are decompressed and written for the trade. If you don't get the first issue in art, you're in trouble. They are not going to catch you up. How do you feel about this?
I only became aware of it when someone told me about it. Yeah, I'm really. I find the concept of decompression is a writer's jerk off. For the most part, what comic book artists don't understand is that, comic books are a writer alpha business right now, and have been for quite some time. And the reasons are varied. One, the companies never want to have what happened to them in the 90s with Image again. Two, the management and representation class that are the dog that watches the tail wag at itself, the lawyers, the attorneys, the representatives, the studios, cannot identify the skill set involved in making a comic book as a perhaps an artist. They can identify the skill set using a keyboard. And most importantly, the writer is the alpha, because the comic book artist, for the most part, is a dumbass who allows the writer to run their room. And what comic book writers seem to understand is that their experience in comic books is often a transient experience. They're going to be moving on. They're developing skill sets that they'll be using in mass market fiction, writing young YA shit, doing movies and television. Whereas artists have become so, comic book art for the most part is so trope-based that it is like kabuki or no plays. It's a series of gestures, it's a series of positions and tropes that cannot be applied in any other direction but in comic books. The market that I had in the 1970s and worked in studio in advertising agencies no longer exists. It's been replaced by digital work. That just doesn't happen. So that whole decompression is imposed upon the market by the writer. And for the most part, most people who read comic books today don't read much outside of comics or comic book related material. They go to comic book movies, they watch comic book television. And they're okay with this, because the so much of the decompression that you're talking about is pandering and flattering to the audience. There's this, that heinous idea of Easter eggs, that idea of sticking little clever in-jokes drives me up the fucking wall because it's condescending and insulting. I once heard a writer ask an artist what they felt like drawing, and I recognized that I was not in the company of a serious person. If a writer asks me that question, I will not work with them. Because it reflects a presumption that comics are, that it supports the triviality of the product. If I had to make my choices based on what I felt like drawing, that's not a professional decision. That's not an adult way of dealing with the material. My job is to do what is asked of me as a professional. Okay? And I resent the trivialization of the effort. Despite the frivolity of it, it still requires a serious attention to detail and professional effort. Again, you're not going to hear this from most people. Most comic book artists and writers will present themselves as happy-go-lucky comic book loving guys. You're welcome to them. But not me. Yeah, one more. Come on, you fucking babies. Yes, sir. Stand up. Henry, after you. Henry, after you.
Are there any stories from comics history that you weren't able to?
Oh, fuck yeah. Oh. We've cut, there's enough material for at least another 5 issues of Hey Kids. But most of it's scurrilous and libelous and but really funny. I mean, some really shitty stuff. You know, I mean, in the course of the first 3 arcs that I did, when I did the first 5, I had no idea there'd be a second or third. I had no clue. I thought I was done. And my editor, who was a brilliant guy, said, let's do another one. And as I told him, the first arc is, of course, about the Silver Age and that bitterness. The second arc is about my